Welcome back, friends, to League on Lock. Eric and Mark with you guys, and the countdown to the LEC continues. We're looking at the player positions, ranking them 10 to 1 onto the jungle role now, where apparently you don't even need to be a jungler to qualify on this list anymore.
Oh, sad times. There certainly seems to be at the bottom here some questionable choices as far as junglers, but I think that when you really want to talk about the jungler position here in Europe, the LEC, you got to be excited because, again, when you get towards the top here, you've got some real rock stars to be looking at.
Yeah, you've got imports, role swaps, and just the Kings from last year, but let's go 10 to 6, starting with that 10th place spot. I think it has to be Kadril because this guy mained mid lane for the majority of his career, and he actually came on to excel as a jungler. So he's coming in at number 10, self-made, yet another Mad Lion making his way to the LEC on SK Gaming. Just not as proven as basically the 8 other guys ahead of him, and the one that's going to jump out to people here, maybe Kikis at number 8 because he was an all-pro jungler and helped completely change the season for Vitality, but I'm starting to think that was an anomaly.
It seems that it should be an anomaly to most people. It is a bit questionable. Obviously, it jumps out to you thinking, Kikis, how's Kikis here? What he did for Vitality last year, getting that thing going, there's no way that you should be having Kikis here down at number 8. But when you're really looking at who else is here in the LEC this year in those starting positions, and you're really trying to examine on a 1v1 type of basis here and what they can provide for teams, I think that Kikis does end up lacking here against some of the guys that will be talked about later here in this list. And I think Kikis' role in the Vitality resurgence there, yes, it was important in how much he got them going in that early game, but I think that that is also due in large part to the talents and skills of the other players that they had there at the time.
And you got to think that the incredible run that Vitality had at Worlds was despite the performance of Kikis. He was clearly the weakest player on that roster throughout the entire event, and they still were one game away from getting out of Worlds. So I think he clearly fell off a bit of a cliff towards the end of summer and then carried that into Worlds. So I think that there are better junglers. He just suited that Vitality lineup super well, but he is coming in here at number 8. Let's keep it rolling. Cold from Unicorns of Love. He was the lone bright spot at times for that squad. Now moving on to Origin. I think he's always been kind of your middle-of-the-pack jungler, even when he was back on Splice.
Yeah, and I think that here when you're asking him on Origin, what are you going to be able to provide for the team? I think more of a mentorship, leadership type role, again here with the likes of Mithy on Origin. I think that these two should be able to provide that pillar of experience for some of these young players here, and as well, try to identify and develop here this identity for Origin to play around. I think Cold will help them with that quite a bit.
Yeah, he's definitely going to be one of the main shot callers. You got to imagine, along with Mithy. In at number 6 is Memento, who's returning to his former team in Schalke, and he, along with Norskeren, were far and away the 2 best things about Roccat in 2018. His early game was incredible, and they should have had more wins, but a lot of the solo lanes and sometimes carries of Roccat didn't quite thrive when it came to late game team fights.
You know me, I didn't miss a single Roccat game.
You watched them all twice.
Always supporting my boy Norskeren there. But you gotta say, when I'm watching all those games, Memento is certainly someone that you've got your eye on and does create those eye-popping type of plays that you wanna be catching there. And you nailed it, Eric, saying that, hey, last year, playing for Roccat, this was certainly one of the bright spots for them, was the performances that Memento was able to dish out here. So I think moving forward into this year, 2019, have to be hoping for even more better performances.
His first few ganks in almost every single game were at the very worst popping a summoner spell, so his early game is definitely going to be fantastic, and that's something Schalke struggled with last year, but it's an entirely new Schalke lineup, so you can't really take anything from what happened last year, but I'm happy to see Memento on what looks like a pretty decent team on paper. Definitely an improvement over Roccat, so hopefully he can thrive in that spotlight, and just like that, we're on to the top 5, Mark. This is where the stacked junglers start showing up because there's a lot of talent, and starting with Splice in that jungle. You got the likes of Xerxes, who again, wasn't the most consistent throughout 2018, but at his peaks, he is a fantastic jungler.
And that's what I want to talk about. The peaks here that you can hit with Xerxes seem to be better than a lot of guys here in the LEC. He seems to find that way to just absolutely make a game snowball out of control in your favor. Xerxes is the guy. But sometimes it goes the other way. that's certainly going to have to stop here. But Xerxes definitely finds a way to snowball these games for his teams quite strongly. And I think one of the other things that you do have to give him credit for is he is willing to play something that is maybe a little bit more off meta than it is at the time. Something like a Hecarim, something like Warwick. We have seen him break out in the past and have some success with here. So I think that some interesting champion decisions is also something that Xerxes brings to the table for Splice.
Jankos in at number 4 probably won't sit well for a lot of people, but just like Xerxes, he had probably even more inconsistencies, and I'd argue at times the peak for Xerxes in 2018 was actually higher than that of Jankos. He had some really bad performances. He had that great stretch where he was playing Braum a whole lot of it, but I think the expectations are so high for Jankos, a lot of the time people are disappointed. He still can be a world-class jungler, but he's coming in at number 4 for us, and then number 3 is the new kid on the block. The import from the Afrika Freaks, Mowgli. I mean, this guy was competing and performing super well in the LCK, so that alone, you got to immediately put top 3, right?
You have to be putting Mowgli up here, and I got to say, if you have been spending any time being a man of culture, woman of culture, watching LCK games, watching your boy Mowgli play for Afrika Freaks, you're hyped. You gotta be hyped here because joining Vitality here, this is a recipe for success for Mowgli. This is a spot where he can jump in, have these strong lanes to be working through here in the LEC. And again, Mowgli is someone that if you've had your eye on the jungle here in the LCK for the last couple of years, you know that Mowgli is a name to watch and you know that he's just waiting for this opportunity to shine. And Vitality, LEC opening year, this seems to be the time.
And Maxlor in at number 2 for Misfits. He has been a consistent rock for them ever since he joined the squad. Always at the top tier when it comes to any stats among jugglers, deserving of that second spot. And really, this list should have been the top 9 because there's no arguing Broxah at number 1. He was the best jungler at Worlds, except for the finals. We'll forget about those 3 games. But other than those 3, he was the best performing jungler at Worlds, best jungler in the West. No doubt he's the best in the LEC.
Right, and even when you bring up this unfortunate Worlds finals here for Fnatic, you have to say that Broxah wasn't exactly the one causing any of these downfalls or any of these issues here in those matches. Wasn't really anything that he could do to help save the team. But when you're talking about Broxah and you're talking about LEC junglers, there's no doubt. This is absolutely the top dog to be going up against. Broxah has become a monster here in this region. We had known about him in 2017 saying that this guy needs to make some improvements here. Came back the next year, and he is absolutely, without a doubt, the most dominating jungler here in the LEC.
Yeah, he was once the most under-the-radar player on that Fnatic roster, but towards the end of summer and really at Worlds, I think people finally realized, okay, this guy's actually just insane and deserving of that top jungler spot in EU. Can't wait to see his Lee Sin in 2019.